Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you try, life still seems to demand more of you, more approval, more attention, more sacrifice? What if I told you the moment you stop giving your power away and choose yourself fully, everything shifts? Your relationships, your opportunities, your inner peace, all of it begins to change. Are you ready to take that step and see your life transform in ways you never imagined? Today, I will guide you to a place where choosing yourself is no longer selfish. It is the key to unlocking the life you are meant to live. By the end of this speech, you will understand the exact wisdom that allows a woman to reclaim her power and shift her entire reality. 1. The power of self-choice. Imagine standing at the edge of your life, at the threshold of what you have always called possibility, yet feeling tethered to the expectations of others. Every choice you make, consciously or unconsciously, has been guided by the world around you, parents, friends, lovers, society. But what if I tell you that none of these choices truly belong to you unless you claim them? The power of self-choice is the recognition that your life is yours to author, your destiny yours to shape, and your essence yours to honor. To choose yourself is not an act of rebellion. It is the first act of awakening. The moment you stop waiting for permission, the moment you stop seeking validation from outside, you ignite a force that has always existed quietly within you. It is subtle, often drowned by the noise of external approval, but once awakened, it is unstoppable. Self-choice begins with small decisions, saying no when you want to say no, pausing before reacting to demands that drain you, embracing the stillness to ask yourself, what do I truly want? Many women have lived a life of silent compromise, masking their desires, shrinking themselves to fit molds crafted by others. But when you choose yourself, you step into a sacred truth. Your needs, your dreams, your very soul matter. Every time you honor your choice, the world reacts, and not always gently. There will be resistance, soft whispers of guilt, subtle pressures, even overt disapproval. But resistance is a sign of awakening. It signals that you are moving beyond the ordinary, beyond the comfortable, into the extraordinary. Choosing yourself transforms every aspect of life. Relationships that once defined you now orbit around your authenticity. Work and purpose align with your passion rather than obligation. Even your inner dialogue becomes tender and respectful, nurturing the one person who must always guide you, you. Yet the first step is often the hardest. It is a quiet, deliberate defiance of a lifetime of conditioned behaviors. It asks for courage, patience, and a willingness to be alone with yourself, fully present with the discomfort that precedes transformation. And just as you begin to feel the tremors of this new awakening, the world will test you. People will attempt to pull you back into the roles you once performed effortlessly. Here is the paradox. The more you choose yourself, the more the universe challenges your resolve. But these challenges are not punishment. They are invitations. They are signs that your awakening is genuine, that your power of self-choice is alive and potent. The moment you understand this, you feel a profound shift within. You recognize that your power is not measured by approval, but by alignment. Every decision becomes an act of self-assertion, every boundary a declaration of sovereignty, and every yes or no resonates with integrity. And as you feel this awakening settle into your bones, you will realize the truth. Choosing yourself is not merely a choice. It is the foundation upon which all other transformations are built. And just as this understanding settles, a question arises within you. If self-choice can awaken such power, what happens when you learn to protect it from the subtle pressures of others? 2. Boundaries are not brutality. Once you claim the right to choose yourself, you encounter a new terrain, the landscape of boundaries. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They are not walls of separation meant to isolate, nor are they harsh instruments of judgment. Boundaries are the gentle but unwavering lines drawn to protect your energy, your essence, and your freedom to live authentically. Every woman who has lived without boundaries knows the cost: exhaustion, resentment, confusion, and the slow erosion of identity. Without boundaries, your energy is dispersed, your attention hijacked by obligations that serve no higher purpose, and your soul slowly fades beneath the weight of other people's expectations. Yet, when boundaries are consciously set, life begins to flow differently. They are declarations of self-respect, silent yet powerful. They communicate to the world that your time, your energy, and your heart are sacred. Setting boundaries requires introspection. It begins with listening to your body, your emotions, your quiet intuition. What feels heavy? What drains your vitality? What demands are incongruent with your purpose? These are the signals that boundaries are necessary, and while setting them may provoke discomfort in others, their role is not to appease anyone but to honor yourself. There is a subtle art to this. Boundaries are not rigid fences. They are flexible yet firm. They allow love to flow without compromise. They protect your essence without creating unnecessary conflict. And when practiced consistently, they recalibrate your relationships. Those who respect your boundaries become allies in your journey. Those who resist reveal themselves for what they are, a reflection of patterns you are no longer willing to entertain. Boundaries also teach the world a silent but undeniable lesson. Your choices, your needs, your life cannot be negotiated away. They form the bridge between self-assertion and self-love. And as your boundaries take shape, a quiet power emerges within, a calm, resolute energy that others sense even before you speak. You are no longer a passive participant in life. You are a conscious architect, sculpting the spaces you inhabit with intention. And as you experience the liberation of boundaries, a subtle question begins to whisper within. If energy can be protected by lines drawn in awareness, what happens when you stop seeking approval and embrace your life independent of others' judgments? 3. The mirror effect. The world you see outside is a reflection of the world within. This is the essence of the mirror effect. Every interaction, every relationship, every circumstance acts as a mirror, revealing not only what is present in your life, but also what exists within your heart and mind. When you choose yourself and set boundaries, the mirror shifts. Suddenly, the reflection changes, not because the world has transformed, but because your perception has evolved. A woman who has embraced self-choice begins to notice this immediately. The way others treat her changes, not because she demands it, but because her alignment with herself radiates authenticity. People respond to energy, not words. When you honor your essence, the world reflects that honor back to you. And conversely, when you compromise, when you diminish your voice or your presence, the mirrors around you show the consequences in subtle ways: disrespect, neglect, or misunderstanding. The mirror effect is profound because it teaches responsibility without blame. It reveals the intimate connection between inner alignment and outer reality. If your life feels chaotic, it is a call to examine your inner state. If your relationships feel shallow, it is a mirror asking you to deepen your connection with yourself. It is not about control, but about awareness. As you begin to see the patterns, a new clarity emerges. Your power lies in noticing the reflections without judgment. You begin to understand that choosing yourself is not an isolated act. It is a ripple that moves outward, influencing everything it touches. The world, in its vast complexity, becomes a canvas reflecting the truth of your choices. And as you observe these reflections, the awareness deepens. If the world mirrors your inner state, how much of your life has been shaped by seeking validation rather than living your truth? 4. Detachment from approval. Approval is the quiet chains that bind many hearts. It is the invisible currency that has governed countless decisions, relationships, and behaviors. The need for approval is subtle, seductive, and persistent, whispering, "You must be liked, accepted, admired." And yet, it is one of the greatest obstacles to freedom. To truly shift your life, detachment from approval is not optional, it is essential. Detachment does not mean arrogance or indifference. It is not the denial of connection, but the liberation from dependence. When you stop measuring yourself by external standards, you begin to reclaim your energy, your clarity, and your peace. You begin to make choices that resonate with your essence rather than with the expectations of others. This detachment unfolds gradually, often through discomfort. You will notice moments where seeking approval feels automatic, hesitation before speaking, over-explaining decisions, smoothing over your desires to avoid conflict. Each recognition of this pattern is a step toward freedom. And as you practice detachment, a profound shift occurs. Your life begins to move in alignment with your values, not the values imposed upon you. Detachment from approval transforms relationships. The ones that remain are authentic, and the ones that leave reveal their dependency on conditional presence. This process is not loss, it is purification. Life begins to simplify, becoming a reflection of your true self rather than a patchwork of other people's expectations. And as this detachment takes root, the mind quietly asks, if approval no longer dictates your choices, what new possibilities arise when you follow the rhythm of your own heart? 5. Rediscovering your identity. After claiming self-choice, setting boundaries, observing the mirror effect, and detaching from approval, there emerges a sacred space, the space of rediscovery. Here you meet yourself again, the woman you were before the world asked you to bend, compromise, or hide. Rediscovering your identity is not a single moment. It is a lifelong unfolding. Identity has often been obscured by roles, obligations, and expectations. A daughter, a partner, a professional, each layer, while important, may have overshadowed the deeper self. Rediscovery is peeling back these layers with patience, courage, and curiosity. It is asking the questions that matter. Who am I when no one is watching? What brings me joy without recognition? What desires have I silenced and why? This journey requires honesty. You must face the parts of yourself that have been neglected, dismissed, or doubted. You must hold space for both your light and your shadow, understanding that completeness comes not from perfection, but from wholeness. And as you reconnect with your essence, a subtle power emerges, a presence that is magnetic, not because it seeks attention, but because it radiates authenticity. Rediscovery also deepens empathy, not through sacrifice, but through understanding. When you know yourself, you understand others with clarity and compassion, choosing connection over codependence. Life begins to feel richer, more intentional, more expansive. And as the rediscovery unfolds, a quiet tension rises within. If identity can be reclaimed fully and fearlessly, what new reality might be waiting when a woman chooses herself completely, without compromise, without hesitation, without apology? 6. Emotional sovereignty. There is a quiet power in taking full responsibility for your emotions. Many women have surrendered their feelings to others, letting moods, words, and actions dictate their inner state. But emotional sovereignty is the realization that your heart is yours alone, that no circumstance, no person, and no expectation can truly govern the way you feel unless you permit it. This is not denial or suppression. It is awareness and mastery. When anger arises, you observe it without becoming it. When sadness lingers, you honor it without letting it define your value. When joy appears, you embrace it fully, recognizing it as a reflection of alignment with your truth. Emotional sovereignty is the anchor of a woman who chooses herself. It is the steady flame in the midst of storms, the calm that persists when the world shakes with uncertainty. It begins in silence. In the quiet moments, you ask, why am I reacting this way? Where does this emotion come from? What truth am I neglecting? And in these questions, insight grows. You see that most suffering is unnecessary, born from relinquishing control over your own inner landscape. Each moment you reclaim your emotional authority, you step further into freedom, and the resonance of that choice spreads outward, influencing every relationship, every decision, and every interaction. And as emotional sovereignty deepens, a subtle curiosity arises. If your inner state can be mastered, how might the world itself shift when you no longer allow it to shake your peace? 7. Intentional relationships. When a woman chooses herself, her relationships are no longer accidents. They are intentional. She does not seek people to fill voids or to validate her worth. She engages with those who honor her presence, who see her boundaries, and who respond to her authenticity with respect. Every friendship, every partnership, every encounter becomes a reflection of alignment rather than obligation. Intentional relationships are cultivated, not forced. They require discernment, patience, and a deep understanding of reciprocity. You notice subtle shifts in energy, the unspoken patterns that reveal compatibility or tension. You learn to invest in connections that nourish and to release those that drain. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the art of prioritizing self without bitterness, choosing love without compromise, and stepping back without guilt. The beauty of intentional relationships is subtle. They do not demand constant proof, nor do they hinge on drama. They flow naturally, effortlessly, and harmoniously. And in this flow, a woman discovers that her value is not contingent upon approval, proximity, or performance. It simply exists. Others may resist, may misunderstand, may attempt to test boundaries, but those who remain are those who resonate, who are aligned, and who honor the quiet authority of self-chosen presence. And as intentional relationships flourish, a quiet tension lingers. If the right connections reveal themselves when you are fully aligned, what deeper understanding awaits when solitude is embraced as a source of power rather than absence? 8. The courage to be alone. Aloneness is often feared, misunderstood as loneliness, but it is, in truth, a sanctuary. The courage to be alone is the willingness to face oneself fully, to meet the depths of the heart without distraction or avoidance. It is here, in the sacred space of solitude, that clarity is born. You are forced to confront truths that relationships, obligations, and noise might have masked. The woman who chooses herself does not fear silence. She listens to the rhythm of her own heartbeat, to the whispers of her mind, to the yearnings of her soul. Solitude teaches patience, self-compassion, and discernment. It illuminates patterns that once dictated choices unconsciously, and it strengthens the foundation upon which self-authority rests. Aloneness is not a withdrawal, it is a preparation, a refinement, a rehearsal for living fully and authentically. Yet, the courage to be alone comes with subtle challenges. The mind may question worthiness, replay old fears, or conjure imagined lack. But in standing firm, in sitting quietly with oneself, these illusions dissolve. Strength emerges not from resistance, but from acceptance. The woman who masters aloneness does not simply survive, she thrives, anchored in self-reliance and inner guidance. And as the stillness of solitude settles, a whisper of suspense arises. If strength can emerge from being alone, what transformations await when the past patterns that bind are consciously released? 9. Releasing toxic patterns. Every woman carries echoes of conditioning, expectations, fears, and patterns inherited or absorbed over a lifetime. Releasing toxic patterns is the courageous act of recognizing that these behaviors, thoughts, and attachments no longer serve growth, love, or authenticity. It is the act of cleansing, purifying, and liberating the self from the invisible chains that obscure potential. This process is rarely easy. Toxic patterns are familiar, comfortable in their predictability, even if they cause subtle pain. They often manifest in repeated disappointments, destructive relationships, and self-sabotaging behaviors. To release them is to confront discomfort, to name truths that may have been ignored, and to let go without expectation or guilt. It is a careful dismantling of old narratives, one thought and action at a time. Freedom lies in recognition. When a woman sees a pattern for what it is, a mechanism of the past, not a dictate of the present, she begins to act differently. Choices that once reinforced limitation are replaced with acts that support authenticity. Relationships, habits, and even self-talk evolve to reflect a new inner reality. Each release expands space for joy, clarity, and alignment, and every liberated pattern is a declaration. She is no longer defined by what diminishes her, but by what elevates her. And as the final strands of old patterns dissolve, a subtle suspense grows. If liberation transforms behavior, how might authenticity itself become magnetic, attracting the life and relationships she truly deserves? 10. Authenticity as magnetism. There is a quiet, undeniable force in living authentically. Authenticity is not performance, charm, or curated perfection. It is the raw, unfiltered expression of self, the alignment of words, actions, and inner truth. When a woman embodies this, she radiates a magnetism that cannot be fabricated, bought, or coerced. The world responds not to effort, but to presence. Authenticity requires courage. It demands vulnerability, honesty, and a willingness to be seen without disguise. It asks that you release masks that once protected you and to meet life directly, with integrity and grace. This magnetism does not seek to manipulate or control. It simply is. It draws opportunities, connections, and experiences that resonate with the soul. And in this resonance, the woman who chooses herself discovers her power. She no longer chases, pleads, or contorts. She attracts naturally, effortlessly, and with precision. This magnetism is subtle yet pervasive. It transforms interactions, reshapes energy, and redefines influence. The presence of a woman fully aligned with herself is felt before she speaks, seen before she acts, and understood without explanation. Authenticity becomes both shield and beacon, a way of navigating the world without compromise and without apology. And as this natural magnetism unfolds, a quiet curiosity lingers. If authenticity draws the right people, the right moments, the right opportunities, what is the next layer of self-mastery awaiting her awareness? 11. From survival to thriving. For much of life, many women move through survival, breathing, acting, responding, always managing, always coping. Survival is a shadow existence, a life measured by endurance rather than fulfillment. Thriving, however, is an entirely different vibration. Thriving is an intimate dance with possibility, a conscious choice to rise beyond mere endurance and enter the flow of purpose. The transition from survival to thriving begins with a decision that is subtle yet seismic, to refuse complacency and embrace growth. Thriving is not a destination, but a rhythm, a continuous choice to align with your values, to nurture your passions, and to step fully into your own power. When you thrive, challenges no longer crush, they refine. Pain is no longer a weight, it becomes a teacher, a catalyst for transformation. Thriving demands courage. It requires leaving behind habits, relationships, and environments that perpetuate limitation. It requires the trust that life, when approached with intention, can yield more than mere sustenance. It can yield joy, clarity, and fulfillment. And in embracing this rhythm, the world responds. Doors appear, not by coincidence, but by alignment, and every step forward strengthens the certainty that life is meant for flourishing, not just survival. And as thriving becomes tangible, a quiet tension arises. If life can shift from coping to flourishing, what deeper power is revealed when attention is focused deliberately on where energy flows? 12. Energy management. Energy is the currency of life, subtle yet immeasurably valuable. How a woman directs her attention, focus, and vitality shapes her reality in ways far beyond conscious calculation. Energy management is the deliberate stewardship of this inner force, choosing where to invest, what to protect, and what to release. It is the discipline of presence, the awareness that attention is not infinite and that what you nurture expands. Mismanaged energy is subtle destruction. It is the quiet exhaustion of responding to every demand, the endless oscillation between obligation and desire. It is scattered focus, internal tension, and depletion of vitality. Proper energy management is the counterbalance, an intentional selection of thought, action, and presence that supports your purpose and preserves your power. This practice begins with noticing where energy is lost, who or what drains your presence without reciprocity. What commitments scatter your attention rather than concentrate it on what matters most? Each recognition becomes a tool, each pause a recalibration. Energy is protected, nurtured, and amplified. And as energy aligns with intention, life begins to flow with clarity and ease. And as the awareness of energy deepens, a question whispers, if focus shapes reality, what transformations await when time itself is reclaimed as sacred, deliberate, and aligned? 13. Reclaiming time. Time is the most finite, precious resource we possess. Yet, for many, it is surrendered unconsciously to the expectations of others, to obligations that do not serve, to routines that dull vitality. Reclaiming time is the act of awakening to its value, of asserting that each hour belongs first to you. It is choosing to live with intentionality rather than drift through repetition. This begins with observation. Which activities nourish your growth? Which relationships enrich your spirit? Which moments ignite joy and meaning? By consciously pruning what does not serve, you reclaim not only hours, but also clarity, presence, and energy. Time, once surrendered, becomes power when returned to conscious stewardship. Reclaiming time is both liberation and challenge. There will be subtle resistance from within in the form of guilt and from without in the form of expectation. Yet every moment of discipline compounds into freedom. Days no longer slip by unnoticed. Life is lived deliberately. Each decision honors the rhythm of self, allowing presence to deepen, creativity to flourish, and alignment to manifest. And as time is claimed, a subtle question emerges. If presence and intention shape existence, What happens when comparison falls away and confidence arises as a natural expression of self-trust? 14. Confidence without comparison. True confidence does not rely on comparison. It does not measure itself against the achievements, appearances, or successes of others. Confidence arises when a woman roots herself in the awareness of her intrinsic worth, her unique path, and the authority of her choices. It is quiet, unassuming, yet magnetic, an energy that draws without striving and influences without force. Comparison is a thief. It erodes joy, distorts perception, and diminishes the recognition of one's own accomplishments. To move beyond it is to embrace self-acceptance, to see clearly the gifts within, and to honor the journey that is uniquely yours. Confidence without comparison allows freedom from envy, fear, and self-doubt. It opens space for authenticity to flourish and for life to align naturally with your essence. This confidence is cultivated through consistent practice, acknowledging your progress, respecting your boundaries, and celebrating your choices. Each step away from comparison strengthens presence, magnifies clarity, and deepens resilience. Life no longer demands validation. It mirrors the quiet certainty within. And as confidence roots itself, a quiet tension arises. If self-trust can replace the need for external approval, what transformations occur when independence extends beyond the emotional to the practical, financial, and personal spheres? 15. Financial and personal independence. Independence is freedom, the ability to navigate life without undue reliance on others, whether emotionally, financially, or practically. Financial and personal independence is not simply about money, it is about sovereignty over decisions, space, and the trajectory of one's life. It is the tangible manifestation of the internal authority cultivated through self-choice, boundaries, and authenticity. A woman who is independent carries a power that is subtle yet undeniable. She can engage in relationships as a partner, not a dependent. She can make choices freely, without compromise born of necessity. She can navigate challenges with clarity and resilience because her foundation rests upon her own capabilities, resourcefulness, and discernment. Independence amplifies confidence, protects energy, and enhances authenticity. This independence is cultivated deliberately. It requires skill, awareness, and discipline. It demands understanding the value of resources, cultivating knowledge, and building habits that reinforce stability and freedom. Each act of self-reliance strengthens authority over one's life, and each decision aligned with autonomy compounds into a reality where choice is abundant and fear is diminished. And as independence blossoms, a subtle question emerges, bridging the inner and outer life. If sovereignty over self, energy, and resources transforms reality, what new heights of presence, influence, and fulfillment await when intuition, clarity, and alignment guide every next step? Life shifts the moment a woman chooses herself. Every choice, every boundary, every act of self-respect, every release of what no longer serves her shapes a reality that reflects her true essence. She moves from survival to thriving, from dependence to sovereignty, from distraction to clarity, and from doubt to unshakable confidence. Her relationships align, her energy flows with intention, her time is reclaimed, and her presence becomes magnetic, not by effort, but by authenticity. Independence and inner authority illuminate her path, revealing that the power she sought outside was always within. When she chooses herself, everything shifts. Life responds, doors open, opportunities align, joy deepens, and the world becomes not a place of limitation, but a mirror of her courage, wisdom, and the infinite possibilities she now embodies.